Well, I finally watched the Third Heaven's Feel movie, and it was amazing. I mean, there are a couple of minor things I could complain about, and I'm probably gonna do a video on it at some point, but right now I'm here to present another D&D build. I was considering to do a bit for Sakura, but I decided that I should focus on my goal to build all the servants from Thursday night first, and it just so happened that there's one particular servant that really got to show off in Spring Song. It is no other than Medusa.
Never know what she thinking. Any moment she will feast her eyes. Medusa will find you and terrorize. An evil power over all mankind. Medusa will find you and take your life.
So, how do we build Rider? Well, I could just use the Medusa NPC stat block, give her Pegasus and call it a day, but that's not really how this works, now does it? So what would we actually need? Well, obviously as a rider you need something to ride on, so getting a Pegasus is our top priority. You are a physical fighter for the most part, you prefer to take your opponents by surprise and are very agile. And while you are technically not a magician, some of your skills seem rather magical in nature. In particular, Bloodfort Andromeda creates a magic field that sucks out the life force out of people. Rider can also use Breaker Gorgon to hypnotize others and manipulate their dreams. Your manipulative skills were actually a bit more pronounced in your childhood when you had access to the Siren Song skill, as it has been localized in FGO, meaning you have a rather enchanting voice. As it helps with the build, I will consider skills Medusa has in her child form as well, but I will ignore her Avenger form, as only a monster stat block could really do that one justice. And most importantly, of course, she has Mystic Eyes that allows her to paralyze people and turning them into stone. As you can see, she's kinda all over the place, so let's start with her stats using the standard array. We start things off with 15 points in dexterity. Agility is like your whole thing. You are the fastest servant in the 5th Holy Grail War, only Lancer can keep up with her. 14 points go into charisma. You might be angst about your health a lot, but don't worry too much about Japanese beauty standards. Everyone knows you're hot. 13 points for wisdom. You're a minor goddess after all, so I think this is rather appropriate. 12 go into constitution. You're a rather tough woman. We put 10 in strength. Your strength rank is C, so rather average for servant standards, and you don't really need it for the split. And we dump intelligence with 8, not because you're actually lacking in those fields, but because we need something to dump. As far as race is concerned, I think it's rather obvious what the most fitting choice is for Rider. If there's one thing that comes to mind when you hear Medusa, it's probably snakes. And there happens to be a playable race of snake people. So yeah, we are making Rider a UNT, which actually comes with quite a few perks. First of all, you can add +2 to your charisma and +1 to your intelligence. But since we already dumped intelligence and this +1 wouldn't really make any difference, I would suggest to use the rules offered in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything to customize your origin and swap out your +1 int for +1 dexterity instead. However, these are optional rules, so run this by your dungeon master first. You also gain Dark Vision, which is always handy, and if that wasn't enough, how about innate spell casting? You get Poison Spray. We haven't really seen Medusa use any poison, but it is rather on brand, and it's rather useful to have. At 1d12, it's actually one of the most powerful cantrips, ignoring the fact that way too much stuff is immune against poison damage. But hey, animal friendship might come in handy, which you can only use on snakes, but an unlimited number of times. Yeah, your mileage may vary on this one, but what really is useful is that you can cast Suggestion once per day for free when you hit level 3, which falls under her hypnotic abilities, so yeah, that's actually pretty great. But what makes UNT actually kinda busted is that you just gain magic resistance, meaning you just have advantage on all spell saving throws, which is incredibly useful, and actually matches Rider. It never really comes up in the story, but she has magic resistance rank B, which is exceptionally high for a Rider class servant, and more on par with the magic resistance of the 3 knight classes. Casters hate you! And remember what I said about way too many things being immune to poison? Well, you are one of them! Regarding your background, well, there isn't really a background for a fallen goddess that lived her whole life in a temple, being bullied by her big little sisters, then turning into a monster until you are killed by ancient Greek Shinji. Well, that's how she describes Perseus. I wonder if she's mixing him up with Jason. Hermit or maybe Haunted One might be appropriate. You could even say Noble, and of course we could just make a custom background. But I'm just going with Athlet for now, since you kinda need acrobatics and athletics anyway. And it gives you proficiency with land vehicles as well. allowing you to use that old granny bike to its fullest. And now let's move on to her classes, and you might have already guessed it after I brought up her Siren Song skill. We are starting things off as a bard, giving us proficiency with light armor, simple weapons, hand crossbows, rapiers and short swords, and 3 instruments of your choice. Since we don't know what instrument Medusa can play, pick whatever you want, but I would recommend the harp because of obvious pun. You also gain 3 skills proficiencies of your choice. I would recommend going with intimidation, as you can be rather scary, animal handling to take care of your horse, and stealth, as this is the main way you operate. You also gain bardic inspiration and your first couple of spells. I think Friends and Minor Illusion are the most fitting cantrips for you, but feel free to be creative. You also gain 4 level 1 spells. Pick what you want, but the 2 spells I would recommend are Charm Person and Thunder Wave. The first one should be rather obvious why, and the later, as it does a rather good job imitating your normal use of Bellerophon. Long Strider is also worth considering, as Medusa is one of the fastest servants around, and we see her using her monstrous strength to boost her legs in Spring Song. At level 2 we go over for Monk, for the time being granting you unarmored defense cause that strip of clothing you are wearing barely constitutes as a dress, let alone armor. Martial arts is also rather fitting for you, as Medusa is probably the most physical fighter in the 5th Holy Grail War, save for maybe Berserker, as you like to kick people around. The 2 nails you're using for fighting are also considered daggers, allowing you to use them as your monk weapons. With your 2nd level monk you gain access to Ki. Flurry of Blows fits your fighting style rather nicely, Patient Defense can come in rather handy, and Step of the Wind is a must-have for you, as Medusa's fighting style revolves around her agility. This is helped by unarmored movement, which increases your movement speed. In particular, in combination with Long Strider, this allows you to run at ridiculous speeds. Tasha's Cauldron also gives you access to a dedicated weapon, in case you want to use something else as your monk weapon. Your 3rd monk level allows you to deflect missiles. Can't really think of a moment where she does that, but it seems fitting, and you get to pick a subclass. After some consideration, I figured that Kensei Monk is the way to go. Boosting your AC a bit with Agile Parry can be rather helpful, and you could also get some mileage out of Kensei's shot, as you like to throw your daggers around, and an extra d4 to every attack is nothing to scoff at. Another optional class feature you can pick is Ki Fueled Attack, which might also come in rather handy from time to time. At level 4 Monk you gain 1 ability score improvement. Use that one to raise your dexterity to 18, but you also gain Snowfall, which might come in rather handy when you're fighting King Arthur on top of a skyscraper. And if that wasn't enough, you can also heal yourself with Quickened Healing thanks to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Level 5 monks gain the also important Extra Attack and Stunning Strike, allowing you to stun an opponent for a key point as long as you hit them with an attack and they fail their con save. In addition, Focused Aim from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything allows you to use key points to improve your attack rolls a bit if you rolled slightly too low. Your 6th level monk comes with Key Empowered Strike and Magic Kensei weapons, making both your unarmed and weapon attacks magical, which is essential if your Dungeon Master doesn't provide you with any magical weapons. Death Strike also allows you to spend key points to roll your martial arts die for some extra damage when you hit your enemy with your Kensei weapon. For your 8th level in total we return to Bard. Level 2 Bard gain Jack of all trades, meaning that you don't need to be proficient with a skill to be good at it. Song of Rest lets you and your party recover a couple of extra hit points, which is good because it's not like Shinji is gonna help you with that. And thanks to Tasha you also gain Magic Inspiration, which allows you to boost the spells of your allies. With your 3rd level in Bard you get to pick a subclass. I decided that College of Valor is the way to go. You're now proficient with medium armor and shields, which you don't use, and martial weapons. Harp, the weapon used by you when summoned as a lancer, seems to be a glaive, but I would favor it to be a spear for better synergy with your monk features. You also gain combat inspiration to boost the damage or AC of your allies, making sure that Shiro doesn't get hit by Saber when you team up. Next up, you gain expertise with 2 skills of your choice, for which I would recommend Stealth and Acrobatics. You also gain access to 2nd level spells, and when your Ice Stone turns someone into stone, you still have a pretty good chance to paralyze him, so Hold Person is something you should definitely pick up. It's easily one of the best spells in the game when fighting humanoids. At level 4 in Bard you get another ability score improvement. Use this one to max out your dexterity, and you also gain another cantrip and another spell. As it's generally portrayed in the anime that masters and servants have a bit of a telepathic link, you can't go wrong with picking up Message. Medusa can also boost herself with monstrous strength. As such I would recommend picking up Enhance Ability. It is also worth considering to swap out one of your old spells for Enthrall. At level 5 your Bardic Inspiration die becomes a d8, and you gain Font of Inspiration, meaning you now get your inspiration dice back after a short rest. More importantly, you get access to 3rd level spells, and while you might not be able to paralyze Saber due to her magic resistance, you can at least slow her down with Slow. Your 6th level gives you Counter Charm. You would also get Extra Attack, but we already got this one from Mong, so it doesn't really matter. As far as spells are concerned, I think Hypnotic Pattern might be worth picking up. Once you hit your 7th level in Bard, you get your first 4th level spell. And yeah, not gonna lie, most of them feel a bit like a stretch. However, I think Great Invisibility fits her style rather nicely, especially since she likes to attack people from a safe distance while making her daggers invisible. This gives you a similar effect, only arguably better. At level 8 you get another ability score improvement. Use that to increase your charisma for an additional inspiration die and a better spell DC. You also gain another 4th level spell. As mobility is your greatest strength, you don't want to be slowed down, so freedom of movement seems like a sensible choice for you. Once you hit level 9 in Bard, your Song of Rest becomes better and you gain level 5 spell slots. Pick up Dream to give Shiro wet dreams so you can suck out a bit of his mana, or just have some fun with him by making him think he has a threesome with you and Sakura. Yeah, that's what she does. Level 10 is where things start coming together. You gain expertise for another 2 skills. I would recommend Athletics and Intimidation. Your Bardic Inspiration die is now a D10 and you gain access to magic secrets. Pick up Sickening Radiance. It might not cover an area as big as a school and it doesn't let you absorb any energy from your victims, but it does overall do a nice job imitating the effect of Bloodfort Andromeda. It sucks the life energy out of every creature within a 30-foot radius sphere. When they start their turn there or move into it, they must make a Constitution saving throw. On a fail, they take 4d10 radiant damage and 11 exhaustion, which can slowly kill them if it stacks up. Which is exactly what Bloodfort Andromeda does. They also can't benefit from being invisible. The main weakness is that the exhaustion goes away after the spell ends. And your other magical secret is, and you probably expected this already, find Greater Steed from the Paladin spell list, allowing you to summon your Pegasus to fight alongside you. Besides that, I would also recommend to swap out one of your unaccounted spells for Hold Monster, because it's Hold Person, but better. When you hit level 11 Bard, you get your first level 6 spell. Pick Guard and Wards. The effect might be different, but the concept is closer to Blood-Forted Andromeda than Negative Energy Plane, allowing you to turn a school building into your very own dungeon. In particular neat, as you can determine who gets affected by the magical properties of the spell. So fighting someone in a room full of stinking cloud gives you a decent home field advantage. At level 12 you get another ability score improvement. Well, you really don't want your enemies to succeed at the same throws, so I would recommend to max out Charisma. At level 13 in Bard, your Song of Rest now heals for 1d10 and you gain your first level 7 spell. And I'm gonna level with you here, they kinda stretch what is appropriate for Medusa. But there's one spell that is actually somewhat appropriate, Etherealness. You know how servants take on a spirit form? Yeah, in theory they all should have the spell. We then cap things off with our 14th level in Bard. You gain 2 more magical secrets. Pick up Spider Climb. Yeah, I know picking up a level 2 spell seems rather wasteful, and frankly I would recommend to pick up any other spell, but since Medusa should be able to run up a skyscraper and we weren't able to put enough levels into Monk for that, I feel obligated to pick it here. And your other spell should of course be Flesh to Stone. And same here, Flesh to Stone isn't a particular great spell, as it requires your opponent to fail 3 con saves in a row while you're concentrating on it. And frankly, it's not worth it. If the creature is dangerous enough that turning it into stone over the course of 3 turns seems reasonable, it usually has a high con save and or legendary resistances, so yeah, this spell is really just good to flex on low CR NPCs. Really, 9 out of 10 times you're better off using Hold Person or Hold Monster. If you are actually intending to use this build, I would recommend you to pick 2 other spells, but it wouldn't be Medusa if she couldn't turn people into stone. And here's the reason why I decided to take College of Valor. Better Magic allows you to make a weapon attack as a bonus action after casting a spell, like Hold Person or Flesh to Stone. So cast Hold Person on them and then attack them for an instant crit. Though you might still get more mileage out of College of Swords, decided to go with Valor to differentiate the build a bit more from the Emir build. And that's Medusa. Frankly, something that is somewhat missing from this build is that Medusa should probably have the blind fighting style and maybe the 2-weapon fighting style. If you want, you can sacrifice one of your ability score improvements to pick up the fighting initiate feat or dip into fighter. You might also want to consider to pick up studded leather armor if you use the stat line I laid out here, as it would increase your AC by 1. If you rolled for stats and got more than 13 points in wisdom, it would even out. I think the Bard part of the build is actually pretty good. You are a pretty great supporter and control the battlefield by restraining your opponents, giving your allies advantage. But your monk levels lack a bit of synergy. Going with fighter or rogue, or maybe even full Bard, might be more effective, but I think this is the best way to present Rider's capabilities. But what about you? Would you build Rider differently? What other Fate characters do you want me to build? Next up is Medea, and after that we can leave Fate's Impact behind us and move on to the spin-offs. I am Tricky folks. Stay foxy.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well. Sometimes you can be too smart to fall. You're